Hello everyone! Do you remember in the beginning of the year when the internet phenomenon Uketsu, an anonymous Japanese writer making eerie, mysterious YouTube videos, published his first novel Strange Pictures in English? The world was very enthusiastic about that, and I did a review myself and I loved the book. Now his second book, Strange Houses, got translated into English and published in June. And in this video I will give you my honest review, because honestly I've not really been a fan and I was really disappointed. And I will give you the reasons why in a second. So to get started, first a proper welcome to my channel. In case you're new here, my name is Laura and I'm a PhD student of comparative literature in Germany. And on this channel I make videos on literary theory, literary classics and also new novels that I find very compelling. And today we talk about Strange Houses by Uketsu, published originally in 2021 and translated to English in 2025, to be precise, in June. So, I have been reading that book and I first want to give you a summary of the premise. I won't take away anything of the plot, no worries. I will keep the whole review spoiler free so that you can enjoy the book in case you want to read it after hearing the review. So the premise is just almost similar to that in Strange Pictures, the first novel that got published in English. So Strange Houses deals with also anonymous writer, like a freelance writer who is interested in the macabre and the eerie, and he sometimes gets stories or ideas sent by people and then he starts to investigate those and then he writes his stories from that. And in Strange Houses, in the beginning, someone writes to him who thought about buying a house in Tokyo and wasn't thinking much about it, but then realized when seeing the floor plan that something was off because there was like a missing space, a dead space in that building that did not lead anywhere and that was just within there. There was no description or anything, so you couldn't really know what was going on. And this way the interest of the writer got sparked and he started thinking and developing his own theories and then asking his friend Kurihara, it's an architect that we also met in the first novel, The Strange Pictures, although they are not really connected. So you can also just read them independently from each other. But he then starts to investigate and think about and develop ideas with Kurihara together, and they come up with ideas. And then the story unfolds and they learn about the floor plan and what's going on with it. They meet other people and they investigate. Other floor plans appear and you get to know the whole story behind it slowly. So basically I think it's a very interesting premise and you could do a lot with it, I think. But somehow I think the novel just didn't convince. It didn't succeed in what it could have been. So that's really, really sad. And I want to talk about a few points that I found lacking. First is especially the narrative suspense, secondly the characters, and thirdly the whole structure of it and what could have been made of that. So starting with the narrative suspense, I think that this is just almost non-existent, honestly. I really enjoyed reading it throughout. I was interested in learning what was really going on, what's the mysteries, what's the secrets that we want to know as readers. But I got not really drawn into the story because there was just not much suspense. And I think that was especially because the way that things are presented is especially through conversations, through reports and letters and such. So you never have like a face-to-face encounter with the story, the characters. Like it's not really feeling alive. You're not feeling like you're in the middle of it, or you're like really an observant at least, or something like that. So that was really lacking for me. And I think that would have made the story much, much better and much more suspenseful. Or even just not giving like a report, but more really telling what was really happening, you know, not just trying to uncover things that have been happening before, but rather trying to take the reader into the story. I think that would have made a big difference. And I think the characters is the second thing I want to talk about. So you have the figure of Kurihara. We know him, he's like this architect and he has very good ideas. So he's an interesting figure in a way. He's got interesting thinking, but we don't really learn much about him as a person. Same as the writer. So we get presented the ideas generally through the lens of both of their writing, their conversations. But I think still somehow as people, they don't become alive and they don't really feel unique. Same as all the other characters actually. I feel like the way they are described and their actions are described sometimes even feels a little bit cliche. Maybe that's just me, but I felt that it's like very two-dimensional sometimes. I mean, maybe that's also connected to the fact that the story is not really long. I think it's around 130 pages or something. I have read it as an ebook version, so I can't really tell. But I think that was really, really sad. So these two things were just not really convincing. And I think also the structure with the floor plans, I think in generally it's a good idea. And I think this is also a point where I can draw in a comparison to Strange Pictures, the first novel, because this first novel was working with eerie kinds of pictures that first somehow maybe seem normal, but you learn that to each picture there is a bigger story and all of these stories are connected with each other. In Strange Houses you have floor plans, but firstly these plans are almost like the same concept, you know, it's like not really different, because I think the drawings in the first book, they were always very different and they were drawn by different people, so like different ages, different backgrounds, so that made such a difference because you got so many psychological detail in a way. And here in Strange Houses you always have these floor plans, and of course they are different and you can meticulously start comparing them and finding the missing or the weird eerie parts and pieces yourself. Of course you can do that, but it's just not as interesting. And I think also just staying with those floor plans and not really adding the houses and not taking the reader really, really into that so much. I think that could have been expanded a lot. So that draws us back to the narrative suspense as well. But like the way that Uketsu builds all of this is that he's always adding the floor plans and then he puts them on the pages again and again, so that the reader is somehow even not forced but invited to look at them again and to compare and to see, oh, I have been missing that. And it is interesting, of course. And I think it also teaches us to really look closely and to learn much more about what we encounter in reading and in looking at things, which is generally a very good thing. But somehow I think there could have been so much more in this, and especially, as I said, compared to Strange Pictures, I think this novel was just not convincing. And also, this is the first and only time I think I will give like a mini spoiler, so if you don't want to hear that, please just skip this part of the video or whatever, just live with it. I wanted to say that I think in this whole mystery building, the way that suspense is created or not created and the whole secrets, a lot of it is just presented to you as a reader. So you learn through reading, and then somehow it feels like, you know, Kurihara and the writer, like the two main figures that try to uncover the story and the secrets, they are chewing things and just spitting it out to you, and you just can absorb the information and just digest it in a way, but not really, you don't really have to think much, honestly. And I think that was boring. I think in comparison to the first novel, I think the whole structure was a little bit different. You also had these two schoolboys in the paranormal club, and they wanted to understand weird phenomena, and then they find this internet blog and it just stops and they want to learn how and why, and that's interesting. But then like there's so many different angles from which the stories and the characters are presented, so I feel like from the very beginning to the very end the tension was just there. It was so interesting and I couldn't put it down. I really wanted to learn so much more. But in Strange Houses, it was like, okay, I keep reading and somehow I really want to learn what's going on, but at the same time it's just not really so interesting and also not super convincing to me, at least. I don't know, maybe you see that differently. If you read it, please let me know. I would love to talk about it. But that was just not the best for me, I think. So just the way that it was presented. And what I found also very interesting in the end is that in the afterword by the translator Jim Ryan, he says that the best thing about Uketsu's writing is that he always leaves so much open, so there's always loose threads that you can follow as a reader after finishing the book, and you can never stop thinking about it, and you know, there's so much going on. But I feel honestly that, I mean, sure, there's things that you still can talk about and think about, but somehow to me at least it did not really matter. So I just put the book down just yesterday, so by now I'm like, well, I like reading it and I would also read the next book by Uketsu, but somehow a lot was missing for me. And I think it could, actually this time it could have been much longer. So I think these 130 pages, you could have put so much more. You could have given the reader a real good experience, but they didn't. So that's really a little bit disappointing. And then I think in the afterword also Jim Ryan teases at the next book. I think it is going to be called Strange Buildings. So maybe this building part that I was missing, like the interesting building, because buildings are so much more interesting than just floor plans. Maybe that can convince me again, and maybe that's going to be a better experience again, because generally I think Uketsu has a very good idea for building suspense and mystery and working with these kinds of stories. So that is not to say that I don't appreciate him as a writer and I think that he has skill, but somehow it's like the phenomena that you often encounter in, like, if there's like a next part of a series or a book or something, that although it's not the second part, that is to be important, like to be clear that it's not the second part, it's independent, but at the same time it's still like sort of a similar premise and a similar approach with these floor plans and the drawings. But somehow the first was so good to me and the second was just like a 2-star read. So between 5-star and 2-star, I think that's really a big disappointment. So I would love to hear what your thoughts are on the novel, if you think about reading it, if you read it, if you want to read it now, if you have been reading or hearing good things about it, and also if you read the first one, because I think for me it was like a very different experience and I would love to get into conversation with you. I will have my comments open, so also my messages, if you want to message me, I would love to hear from you. If you have questions, just drop them down below in the comments as usual, and thank you for watching. One last thing, I found it very interesting that the only reviews so far that I've been really reading were very positive and like, oh, he will never disappoint and it's such a good book and it's almost the same as Strange Pictures and such, or sometimes people encountering Strange Houses as the first book reading by Uketsu. But for me, somehow it just didn't work. And I thought, why not make a review on it as well, because it's also like my just honest opinion, and I hope you could take something away from it. Thank you for watching and see you in my next video then. Bye bye!